In the glass-towered heart of Seoul's financial district, Kong Jae-in stood at the pinnacle of everything most people only dreamed of. At 33, he was the youngest CEO in Zenith Innovation's history, a tech company worth billions, known for its sleek, cutting-edge designs and cutting-edge solutions. He was every bit the archetype of the perfect business magnate: sharp jawline, piercing eyes, and the kind of tailored suits that made even the most seasoned professionals feel underdressed. On top of it all, he was the most eligible bachelor in Korea, draped in prestige and allure. Women in his world were as numerous as the city lights, always vying for his attention, always eager to be seen by him, to have their moment in his spotlight. Yet despite all their charms, all their beauty, it was one woman who stood out among them, a woman he couldn't ignore, though she did everything in her power to make sure he did. Her name was Emma Okafor, and she wasn't like the others. Not even close. The first time Jae-in laid eyes on her in the corporate offices of Zenith, she was nothing like the dazzling women in the office, who practically threw themselves at him with every glance, every conversation. No, Emma had no time for that. She was too focused on the work at hand, her sharp intellect cutting through the boardroom like a blade. In meetings, she spoke with an unmatched confidence, never bowing to anyone's expectations, not even his. She had her own quiet strength, one that made Jae-in sit up straighter, one that made his gaze linger longer than he ever intended. Yet, she never once seemed to notice. Despite the fact that Emma's beauty was undeniable, her rich, dark skin like smooth, polished mahogany, her striking features that seemed almost out of place in a room full of pale faces, she never made a move to draw attention. It was a complete contradiction to everything Jae-in was used to. In his world, women chased after him. They admired him, often from a distance, often desperate to earn his affection. But Emma? She looked at him as if he were just another man, just another person in a room full of distractions. He didn't understand it. He had tried everything to get her to notice him: subtle compliments, small, unspoken gestures meant to draw her in. But she remained impervious, focused only on her work and, it seemed, on the life she was building for herself. She was uninterested in the grand gestures he usually offered. And that intrigued him. There was something about the way she carried herself, something about the way she simply was, that tugged at him in a way he couldn't fully explain. Jae-in had always been the one to lead, to control the direction of his life, and the people in it. But for the first time, he felt completely out of control, lost in the way Emma moved through the world, unfazed by his status. It was like she was from a different world altogether, one where the rules he had mastered didn't apply. The other women in his life, socialites, colleagues, high-profile public figures, had always tried to get close to him. But Emma? She was different. At the company parties, Jae-in would catch glimpses of her, always with her back slightly turned to him, eyes fixed on something else, someone else, or maybe nothing at all. But the truth was, he couldn't help but notice every move she made. Her posture, her unwavering focus on the work at hand, her quiet confidence that seemed to shine brightest when she wasn't paying attention. The way she held herself, untouched by the allure of power, made her all the more captivating to him. She wasn't afraid to look away. And that was exactly the problem. Jae-in had spent his entire career being the one to choose, to take whatever he wanted. But Emma wasn't like the others. She didn't care for his money or his status. She wasn't moved by the men who flocked to him. She wasn't even moved by his charm, which, in all his years of experience, he had come to see as his greatest weapon. Emma's indifference, her ability to look away when every other woman wanted to pull him into their world, was maddening. But it was also exactly what he wanted. She had become the puzzle he couldn't solve, and for the first time in his life, Jae-in found himself completely and utterly captivated by a woman who refused to fall into his orbit. But the question remained, why wasn't she like the others? Why did she look away when all the other women wanted him? Little did he know, the answer to that question would change everything. But first, he needed to figure out what had made him fall so hard for a woman who didn't care if he existed in her world at all. What was it about Emma Okafor that had so completely captured his attention? The more he wondered, the more it seemed like this wasn't just another fleeting attraction. This was something real, something deeper, and that, above all, terrified him. Jian found himself restless in a way he had never been before. His mind, usually sharp and disciplined, wandered back to Emma with a frequency that surprised him. She had become an obsession, but not in the way other women had captivated him. With them, it had always been about the chase, about the thrill of winning over someone who was eager for his attention. But Emma was different. She didn't look at him like he was some prize to be won. Instead, she looked at him like he was just another part of the scenery, a passing detail in her life. It was this indifference that made him question everything he thought he knew about himself. It wasn't that Emma was cold or unapproachable. On the contrary, she was warm, intelligent, and approachable, but not in the way that made him feel special. Her kindness wasn't reserved for him, it was given equally to everyone. There were no flirty glances or subtle touches meant to spark his interest. She treated him like a colleague, not a CEO. And that, in itself, was intoxicating. Days passed, and Jian found himself seeking out opportunities to be in the same room as her, hoping that somehow, this time, he would be able to crack through the walls she had built around herself. He made excuses to attend meetings where Emma was leading a presentation or offer suggestions during brainstorming sessions, anything to keep her close, to draw her attention in ways that didn't feel forced. But no matter how much he tried, no matter how many ways he tried to impress her, Emma remained unfazed. The other women in the office noticed. They saw how he lingered in her presence, how his eyes would follow her movements, how he seemed distracted, as if something or someone had shifted his focus entirely. They whispered among themselves, a blend of curiosity and irritation, trying to figure out what it was about Emma that made their beloved CEO look at her the way he had never looked at them. At first, Emma noticed none of this. She was too focused on her work. She had always prided herself on being independent, on carving out her own path. She had built her career on her merit, not on the attention she received from men. When she'd first joined Zenith Innovations, she had made a quiet promise to herself to never let anyone, especially someone like Jian, distract her from her goals. She'd seen what happened to women who got too close to powerful men, how they either got swept up in the chaos or faded into the background when the attention moved elsewhere. She wasn't interested in either. But something had changed, she realized. There was an unspoken shift between them, one she couldn't quite place. Jian's usual charm, the very thing that had made him irresistible to so many, seemed to fall flat with her. He had stopped sending her the usual signals, the flashy gestures, the compliments aimed at winning her favor. Instead, there was something more subtle about the way he approached her now. He seemed unsure. He seemed, for the first time, like someone who didn't have all the answers. One afternoon, Emma was alone in the office, going over a set of figures on her laptop when she heard the soft sound of footsteps behind her. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. She had learned to recognize Jian's presence, how it filled the room without him even needing to say a word. But this time, she didn't feel the usual rush of nervousness or the subtle anticipation that had come with his past attempts at gaining her attention. "Emma," he said, his voice quieter than usual. She looked up, meeting his gaze for the first time without the barrier of a meeting or a task to focus on. It was just the two of them, alone in the space that had once felt so distant between them. "Yes, Jian." He hesitated, the words hanging in the air between them for a moment before he spoke again. "I've been thinking about something you said the other day during the presentation. You mentioned how we sometimes get lost in the bigger picture, how we forget the small details that keep us grounded. I want to understand what you meant by that." Emma paused, caught off guard by the genuine interest in his voice. For the first time, Jian didn't seem like the powerful CEO who could command a room with his presence. He seemed vulnerable. She leaned back in her chair, studying him for a moment before answering. "I think," she started slowly, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes we get so focused on the end result, on the next big project, that we forget why we started in the first place. The small moments, the little successes, those are what make everything meaningful." Giant absorbed her words, his gaze never leaving hers. There was a flicker of something in his eyes, an understanding, maybe even admiration, but it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. "That's a good perspective," he said quietly. "I think I've been focused on the wrong things for too long." It was a confession, a rare one from someone who had never shown his weaknesses to anyone. And for a brief moment, Emma saw a side of him that she hadn't before, one that wasn't driven by ambition or ego, but by a desire for something real. She didn't know how to respond. She hadn't expected this, hadn't expected Giant to reveal himself in such a way. The man she had always thought of as untouchable, unreachable, was now sitting in front of her, searching for meaning in the very things he had once brushed aside. And for a moment, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, he wasn't as different from the other men she'd known as she had once believed. But she quickly dismissed the thought. This wasn't about him. This was about her, about the life she had built for herself, independent of anyone else. She couldn't afford to let him pull her into a world that wasn't her own, no matter how much he seemed to want to. "I think you'll find it, Giant," she said softly, offering him a smile. "But you have to stop looking for it in all the wrong places." With that, she returned her focus to her laptop, signaling that the conversation was over. She couldn't afford to get distracted. Not now, not by him. Giant stood there for a moment longer, watching her, the weight of her words pressing on him in a way he couldn't explain. For the first time in his life, he wasn't sure if he was the one in control anymore. And somehow, that realization felt like both a victory and a defeat. The days that followed were filled with an unspoken tension between them, an invisible thread that connected Giant and Emma in ways neither could deny. Despite their distance, Emma's resolve to maintain her focus and Giant's internal battle between his desires and his responsibilities, something had shifted. The more Giant observed her, the more he realized that his pursuit wasn't about conquest, wasn't about winning her over with his usual charm or power. It was about understanding her, about understanding himself through her eyes. Emma didn't need him. She didn't need anyone. And it was this independence, this refusal to bow to expectations, that fascinated him. In contrast, Emma found herself unexpectedly drawn to Giant's vulnerability, something she had never expected to see in a man who ruled his empire with such cold precision. His admission, the brief moment of honesty they had shared in that quiet office, made her question the assumptions she had built around him. For the first time, she saw Giant not as the aloof CEO, but as a man who had been shaped by his world, his success, and his isolation. And though she tried to remind herself that she wasn't interested in entering that world, too dangerous, too complex, her heart refused to listen to her mind. The attraction was there, undeniable, but Emma wasn't ready to open herself up to it. Not yet. Weeks passed in a strange dance between them. Giant continued to find subtle ways to spend time with Emma, never pressuring her, never pushing too hard. And Emma, though she tried to maintain her distance, couldn't help but wonder what it would be like to let herself be seen, to let herself fall into something that wasn't controlled or planned. It was late one evening, when the office was nearly empty and the rain beat softly against the windows, that Giant approached her again. She had stayed behind, finishing a report, the soft glow of her desk lamp casting a halo around her. The building, silent except for the hum of the city outside, seemed to echo their solitude. "Emma," Giant's voice broke the stillness. She looked up from her screen, surprised to see him standing there, his posture more open than she had ever seen it. "Giant?" she asked, a small frown forming on her brow. "I've been thinking," he started, hesitating before continuing. "About what you said before, about not searching in the wrong places. I know I've been trying to find meaning in all the wrong ways, through success, through the things I can control. But I think I've been missing what truly matters." Emma met his eyes, something flickering in her chest. She wanted to dismiss it, to stay in her safe space, but she couldn't. She felt his sincerity, the quiet shift in him that told her he wasn't just saying words. He was trying to change. "I'm sorry, Emma," he continued, stepping closer. "I've been trying to impress you, trying to win you over with all the wrong things. But what I really want is to know you. For who you are. Not who I want you to be. Her heart skipped. She hadn't expected this. Not from someone like him. She had expected more of the same, more of the power plays, the charm, the subtle manipulation. But this was different. This was raw, real. And as much as she wanted to resist, she couldn't deny the connection she felt. I've always admired you, Giant said, his voice low but steady. Not just for your intellect, but for your strength, your independence. It's something I've never had, something I've always wanted. And maybe I'm afraid of it. But I know that what I'm feeling now, what I'm offering, is real. I'm not asking for anything from you, Emma. I just want to see if we can figure this out together. Emma stood still, her breath caught in her throat. For the first time, she wasn't looking away. For the first time, she wasn't putting up walls. She was listening. Really listening. To him. To herself. The silence between them stretched for a long moment before she spoke, her voice soft but firm. I don't know what this is, Giant. But I can't promise you anything. Not yet. I need time to figure this out. I need to know that what you're offering isn't just a fleeting moment. Giant nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. I understand. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here whenever you're ready. And just like that, everything shifted. The tension between them, once filled with uncertainty and doubt, was now filled with a quiet promise. A promise of what could be, a promise of what they could discover together. Emma didn't know where this would lead, didn't know what it meant for her future. But for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid to take that first step forward, to let herself experience something real, something that wasn't driven by expectations or past fears. As the rain outside softened and the city lights twinkled in the distance, they stood there, two people who had once been strangers, now connected by the unspoken understanding that sometimes love isn't about being the perfect match. It's about being brave enough to let it happen, even when you don't know where it will take you. And for Emma, that was enough for now.